So we see a lot of reporting and KPIs initiatives nowadays, and the health check is what helps you get the data aligned in support of those reporting initiatives.
Welcome to Actualizing Success. In this podcast series, our in-house advisors discuss today's finance and technology topics with an emphasis on solutions that embrace tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Priscila Nagalli, Managing Director of Actualize Consulting, and I have my colleague here, Brian Stitt, Director. With us today, we're going to be talking about the importance of Treasury Technology Health Checks. Welcome, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Priscilla. I'm excited to talk about how critical it is for teams to periodically review and assess how they use Treasury technology, as well as how to do so through thoughtful analysis of their current state, review of proficiency with the system, and overall operational effectiveness. Priscilla, in your experience, when should this exercise be conducted, and why do you think Treasury health checks are so important?
So there are a number of scenarios where clients can benefit. So the timing, usually when a client has been using the system for, let's say 3-4 years, that is important to have a refresh. It's really hard to keep track with all the new releases. Vendor is having a major release on functionality that may be relevant, and it could be more evolving than will require a health check. Some of scenarios we also see, we have many clients now migrating to cloud on the ERP. So that is also a good time to review. It's important to see where the ERP and the TMS could not necessarily conflict, but what is the best integration setup, right? What one system does better than the other. So every time you're thinking about changing the ERP, I would say it's definitely important to take a look at the TMS and how can both work together. Another part is the people, right? If there is a key personnel turnover or any change in leadership, goals, company goals, restructuring. So that is also an important time to look at your technology. What is the value, right, that the TMS is bringing? It's not unusual when a first implementation, people are very busy to getting the basics done, which, that in itself can be evolving. But what else can you do once you're more used to the system? And not spending too much time on keeping, doing things semi-manually, right? I think that a good trigger is I'm doing things manually still, so something has to be wrong. That's a good time to get a health check. Brian, I know we've worked on many of those. Can you walk us through a little bit of the process?
Yeah, for sure. So our methodology begins first with, confirming the scope of the engagement, which systems will we be reviewing, what functionalities is the team using today. Then we look to build an understanding of the current system usage, the underlying business process, inside or outside of the system, and the team's level of engagement. Are they even using it? Do they have a strong understanding of how the system works? So we customize a questionnaire to meet a client's needs based on the scope, and for us to set a foundational understanding of their current landscape. So our aim is to gather information ranging from confirming any interfaces with other systems, as well as workflow questions, such as the level of automation, any required approvals. We also request examples of reporting outputs and ask the team to share their pain points and the goals of the current processes to get an understanding ourselves of what is the intention of what they're looking to get out of the system, and how close are they to getting there today. So these questions really help support a more effective interview when we host those discussions, and they facilitate us having the correct level of detail. So when we have these interviews with the client, we're not starting at square one, and they help us ensure that nothing is overlooked. So next, we use the questionnaire as basis for those interviews, and walk through the Treasury operational activities. So here we take deep dives into their current processes to see in action the level of system usage, And these deep dives help uncover other opportunities as well that the Treasury team might not even be aware of, because it gives us a chance to see what features are they using, are they not using, that can help make for stronger recommendations. Then we compile the data with any open questions to the client and prepare a peer benchmarking assessment where we rank our client's technology platform deployment against industry peers. Here we detail how efficiently the client is using the system and highlight where tasks could be enhanced. It also includes a system scorecard to highlight potential areas for improvement. Then finally, we create a best practices recommendation set with a clear action plan. So we share this along with detailed observations and supporting documentation, and then we discuss next steps to enhance the system. And overall, we make sure to denote any high priority initiatives, the timing, and the impact to implement across those recommended work streams. These projects can be really effective in identifying and, as importantly, articulating enhancements that the Treasury teams might have noticed, but may not have had the bandwidth or the experience to put forward to their leadership teams. Thinking back on a couple projects, one impactful but fairly simple case I came across was on a Treasury Management System health check, where a client was already set up with bank reporting. A number of other modules were live in production, but they were receiving prior and current day reporting into their TMS, but they were still logging into the bank portals like a number of times a day to obtain incremental intraday activity. Then they would move into their TMS and enter these transactions manually. So a simple but really effective recommendation that they implemented was amending their intraday reporting timing to align with their actual positioning decisions. And so they ended up saving hours each day by getting more timely data into their system automatically, and minimizing how often they had to log into other portals. Another client was actualizing their daily forecast using intraday activity. They're basically tying their forecast to their last position of the day as opposed to tying to their final end of day balances. And so this meant there was a gap whenever they tried to perform variance analysis. And each day they had to perform a reconciliation exercise to bridge their intraday position to the actual ending balance. So basically just capturing intraday activity that hadn't posted as of their last position. So we recommended that they pose to leadership just decoupling their forecast actualization from that intraday positioning reporting and to actualize using actual end of day data. And in doing so, they completely eliminated the need for this non-value add reconciliation task, saving them quite a bit of time each week, set them up with a better foundation towards more effective forecast variance analysis. So these are just a couple of examples that save the clients meaningful time that came out of our projects. But Priscilla, from your experience, do you have examples of how these health checks have benefited our clients?
Yeah, so I think nowadays it evolves through time. I think initially when we started doing those, a lot was geared towards training, and it's normal. The implementation time, they focus on certain areas. Now they're more proficient. They would expand their knowledge into more functionality, and also absorb better. So training, was very almost every time, and is still very relevant. But what I'm seeing a bit more is further rollout to other regions and functionality that was not necessarily being used. There are certain functionality that you can get by without it, but it greatly helps. I'll give an example is around financial transactions. I'll say more specific to accounting entries. Oftentimes, people don't get very interested in the early on, just do a straight through process on their debt portfolio or even investments. And then when they do a health check, they're like, oh, I didn't even realize I could further automate. That's definitely an area where companies tend to expand, or from a regional perspective, sometimes they choose to implement at headquarters and give basic training for international offices, and then a couple of years later, then the international offices, they are more interested in doing it and getting more benefit from the technology, which doesn't really cost more. It's just a lot of times is just expanding maybe a couple more banks to report, but a lot is around training. Another area that are more relevant nowadays, I was saying earlier about the ERP migrations to cloud. Payment factory is a big one. We do see clients that originally only implemented payments for treasury purposes, and later realized that, a payment factory initiative, and by payment factory, I mean a straight through from the ERP to the TMS out to the bank, really takes off the load from IT teams and standardize the processes. So there is and that's on a global scale because of potential number of different bank relationships. And it is a heavy lifting for the ERP. So they tend to do the 80-20 rule, as opposed in a TMS, you are already connected. So that process is a lot easier and definitely much cheaper than when you do that via an ERP. The last one I think is worth, it's last but not least, is the reporting capabilities now, right? So I think all the TMSs that we see out there have recently invested heavily on dashboards and BI and all sorts of reporting capabilities, which in the past things were a lot more operational, and now the true transition to strategic is being enabled by using the data for the benefit of treasury and strategic decisions. So we see a lot of reporting and KPIs initiatives nowadays, and the health check is what helps you get the data aligned in support of those reporting initiatives. One area that we also find a very great response from the health check is operational efficiency, right? The teams are very much focused on doing things, and people tend to fall back into what they feel comfortable, and that tend to be Excel and manual processes. So I think giving that nudge into, all right, here's what you could be doing this very same task more efficiently, that has been also a great success of the health check. User navigation is another piece. How people are using the technology and navigating, it varies, and oftentimes is not optimal. I'll give an example, right? And that was a case where there was a team turnover, and you only have maybe a week to train the new staff. If you're lucky, most times the person who was doing the task is gone, and then the new person is just looking at SOPs or documentation to be able to pick that up. So, and then they just make their own processes, but zero training, right? Like not supported training. So I think the user navigation and even helping with how they visualize the system and their maps that you can create in order to help this navigation. Last but not least, on the areas of operational efficiency, operational risk, that relates to poor training sometimes, and I don't want to say poor training, but really lack of absorption of, sometimes it's too much to take on, and clients don't pay much attention into areas that they should. So at Actualize, we always try to highlight and document, but oftentimes when we do a health check, we find potential gaps on their own control. So we are very, very particular about this. All of our implementations do have best practices around system administration, but sometimes we do see out there things that are, you just got to make sure that all your controls are tight. You reduce the risk of errors or manual entries that can trigger operational issues.
Yeah, thanks, Priscilla, for sharing those examples. I definitely agree, especially team member usership over the system, um, especially after the system has been implemented some time ago. Whether there's turnover or folks kind of fall into bad habits can be a huge area for opportunity. I think that one sticks out to me quite a bit. But I was curious, what other industry best practices stand out to you when we, that we can recommend to our clients through the course of the health check projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at Actualize, we do have our own created best practices and best-in-class treasury processes. So given all, I think the benefit of being on the consulting side, any given day, we work with several organizations, right? So we do have this opportunity to influence the industry, to create what best practices should look like. So I would say data, right? What is best practices around data? So we do have a robust process to make sure that data is sourced and managed efficiently. And there are all sorts of controls around it, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at a dashboard, you need to rely on those numbers. Workflows. And I think the way I think workflows is not only an isolated, for example, a payment process workflow, it's almost the beginning to end of an entire process. I'll give, for example, FX trading as an example, right? Once the exposure is assessed, how that translates into trades, and that feeds back into the technology where you push data for settle, you push payments for settlement, but at the same time you have all the data for accounting and mark to market. So workflows can be complex, but that's where we really here to support our clients to make sure that the beginning to end, from the time you identify an exposure to all the way that it makes it to your financials, that workflow is solid. So the best practices on workflows, that's where we truly support and add value. And those health checks help to pick it up, because we analyze every process and every step, and we recommend improvements around that. It's in our job as Actualize to be on top of those trends, but also educating our clients, right? Because we do appreciate that clients have a day job, but it is our responsibility to make sure that they're doing their day job to their best as possible. So that's where we partner with them, enhancing their processes and making those organizations being more strategic.
Thanks, Priscilla. I think another kind of piece in closing that's helpful to think about is that these health check projects, while they cover such a broad breadth of treasury technology usage and business process, from a initiation standpoint, they entail a pretty relatively small level of effort to execute and to work through. And thinking that the main point here is to help identify and prioritize, and it gives clients the opportunity to pick and choose which of those recommendations they even want to proceed with. So it's a pretty low effort way to get a picture of your current platform usage, and as well as have the talking points for management on those that you see add value for your team. And then I might also add that there's quite a few cases where clients can even take on some of these recommendations themselves, where they do have strong system usership.
Yep, that's right. I mean, the initiative of the health check is a pretty compact initiative. It's quick, and even better, because the original implementation is already done, typically those wins are seen much faster. So it's a lot more gratifying than the whole 6 months, 1 year process that you did at the initial implementation. So it's definitely a very quick win. But it gives the roadmap, right, on what to tackle and what's relevant, and prioritizing accordingly. Yep. Well, thank you so much, Brian. This was great. I think I hope the audience enjoys and get inspired. And really, this is a great time in the industry to perform a health check because there are a lot of changes. And being on top of that will only make departments more efficient and strategic in face of the macroeconomic changes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Priscilla.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Actualizing Success. Make sure to visit us online at www.actualizeconsulting.com, where you can explore our service offerings. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or your preferred platform. If you've enjoyed what we talked about today, please consider leaving a review and following us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions or would like to share your opinions with us, please send us a note at podcast@actualizeconsulting.com. We look forward to hearing from you.